Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a serious topic, the top 10 countries on the brink of collapse. From economic meltdowns to political chaos, these nations are facing crises that could reshape the world, and millions of lives hang in the balance. Let's pull back the curtain and see what's really happening across the globe. Number 10 is Lebanon, a nation once celebrated for its vibrant culture, cosmopolitan spirit, and remarkable resilience. Beirut, its capital, was once known as the Paris of the Middle East, a city where art, music, and intellectual life flourished alongside a thriving economy. Today, that legacy is unraveling under one of the world's most severe financial crises, leaving daily life unrecognizable for millions. The Lebanese lira has lost over 98% of its value, wiping out savings and plunging families into uncertainty. Banks have frozen accounts, making it nearly impossible for people to access their own money. Over 80% of the population now lives in poverty, relying on aid to survive. The middle class has all but disappeared, and desperation is everywhere. Years of corruption, political infighting, and reckless government spending created a financial time bomb that finally exploded in 2020, followed by the devastating Beirut port blast. Hospitals now lack basic medicines, power cuts are constant, and the healthcare system is on the brink of collapse. Fuel shortages paralyze daily life, with endless lines at gas stations and entire neighborhoods plunged into darkness for hours at a time. The country's best and brightest are leaving in droves, seeking opportunity abroad and draining Lebanon of hope, energy, and talent for the future. Meanwhile, political leaders remain deadlocked, blocking much-needed reforms and international aid, while ordinary citizens pay the price. Talks with the IMF have stalled, and without real change the downward spiral only deepens, leaving the country's future in limbo. Lebanon stands as a stark warning. Even prosperous, cosmopolitan nations can collapse under the weight of corruption and failed leadership. The world watches, but for many Lebanese, survival is a daily struggle, and hope is growing harder to find. The question remains, can Lebanon pull back from the edge, or will its story become a cautionary tale for generations to come? Number 9 is Venezuela, home to the world's largest oil reserves, yet gripped by economic ruin. Years of mismanagement, price controls, and political turmoil hollowed out the economy. When oil prices crashed, hyperinflation hit, making the bolivar worthless and basic goods unaffordable. The healthcare system collapsed, and millions face hunger and malnutrition. Over 7.7 million Venezuelans have fled, creating a massive refugee crisis across Latin America. Political deadlock and repression block any path to recovery. Venezuela's collapse shows how natural wealth can be squandered and how quickly a nation can unravel. The crisis ripples far beyond its borders, straining neighbors and reshaping the region. For ordinary Venezuelans, daily life is a fight for survival. Number 8 is Sri Lanka, once a tourist paradise, now a symbol of economic collapse. Years of debt-fueled projects, the 2019 Easter bombings, and the pandemic devastated the economy. A sudden ban on chemical fertilizers triggered food shortages and inflation soared. The country ran out of foreign currency, leading to crippling shortages of fuel, food, and medicine. In 2022, mass protests toppled the ruling family, forcing the president to flee. The IMF stepped in, but recovery demands painful reforms, and public trust is shattered. Sri Lanka's story is a warning about debt, mismanagement, and the power of people to demand change. The road ahead is uncertain, but the people's resilience remains. Can Sri Lanka rebuild, or will crisis return? Number 7 is Yemen, where nearly a decade of war has created the world's worst humanitarian crisis. A tangled conflict of government forces, Houthi rebels, and foreign powers has shattered the country. 2/3 of Yemenis need humanitarian aid. Famine and disease are rampant. The healthcare system is in ruins, and millions face starvation. Recent fighting and attacks on Red Sea shipping threaten to widen the conflict. International intervention has failed to bring peace, and the suffering deepens. Yemen's future is bleak. Rebuilding will take generations if the war ever ends. The world's attention drifts, but the crisis grows. Yemen is a stark reminder of the cost of forgotten wars. The need for peace has never been more urgent. Number 6 is Haiti, a nation where the state has all but collapsed, leaving millions of people trapped in a daily struggle for survival. Gangs now rule the streets with impunity. The shocking 2021 assassination of President Jovenel Moïse shattered what little order remained, creating a power vacuum that was quickly filled by violent criminal groups. These gangs have seized control of key infrastructure, including fuel terminals and major roads, and now dominate much of the capital, Port-au-Prince. For ordinary Haitians, daily life is marked by kidnappings, extortion, and the ever-present threat of violence. Access to basic necessities like food, clean water, and healthcare is severely limited. Overcrowded hospitals struggle to cope, and cholera has returned, threatening the most vulnerable. The government is powerless, the police are outgunned, and international help remains hesitant and slow to arrive. In 2024, coordinated gang attacks escalated the crisis into a full-blown insurrection. Thousands have been forced to flee their homes, and entire neighborhoods have been destroyed. Without outside intervention, elections and any hope of recovery are impossible. Haiti now stands as a failed state in the Western Hemisphere, its institutions in ruins. The world faces a stark choice: intervene to restore order and hope, or watch as chaos and suffering continue to spread beyond Haiti's borders. Number 5 is Sudan, where a brief hope for democracy has been crushed by civil war. In 2019, a revolution ousted a dictator, but in 2023, rival generals plunged the country into chaos. Fighting has devastated Khartoum and Darfur, with reports of ethnic violence and atrocities. Millions are displaced, hunger is widespread, and basic services have collapsed. Ceasefires have failed, and regional powers fuel the conflict. Sudan is disintegrating along ethnic and regional lines, threatening the entire Horn of Africa. The dream of democracy has become a nightmare of war. The humanitarian crisis deepens daily. Sudan's future hangs in the balance. Number 4 is Myanmar, where a military coup in 2021 ended a decade of fragile democracy. The people rose up in protest, but the military responded with brutal force, igniting a nationwide civil war. The economy collapsed, inflation soared, and millions fell into poverty. Healthcare and education systems have crumbled, and over 2.5 million are displaced. Ethnic armed groups and resistance forces have made major gains, challenging the junta's control. The military's grip is weakening, but the risk of even greater violence looms. Myanmar's future is uncertain. Will resistance bring change, or will the conflict deepen? The world watches as a nation fights for its future. The cost in human lives and suffering is immense. Myanmar stands at a crossroads. Number 3 is Afghanistan, where the Taliban's 2021 return plunged the country into crisis. International aid vanished, the economy collapsed, and 97% of Afghans face poverty. Drought and hunger are widespread. Families resort to desperate measures to survive. Women and girls have been erased from public life, banned from education and most work. The Taliban have brought some security, but at the cost of rights and hope. Without recognition or aid, Afghanistan remains isolated and impoverished. The humanitarian catastrophe deepens with little prospect for recovery. Afghanistan's future is shrouded in uncertainty. Number 2 is Zimbabwe, where collapse has been a slow, grinding process. Once Africa's breadbasket, decades of misrule and disastrous land reforms destroyed the economy. Hyperinflation wiped out savings, and the new currency is already under pressure. 90% of people work in the informal sector. Millions rely on remittances to survive. Healthcare and education are in crisis, and hope is scarce, especially among the youth. Zimbabwe's failure has sent millions fleeing to neighboring countries, straining the region. The ruling elite clings to power, blocking reform and recovery. Zimbabwe is a cautionary tale of squandered potential. The cycle of crisis continues with no end in sight. Number 1 is Syria, the epicenter of a decade-long war that has shattered a nation and left scars that may never fully heal. Once a vibrant country, Syria has become synonymous with devastation and loss. What began as peaceful protests in 2011, inspired by the Arab Spring, quickly spiraled out of control. The government's violent crackdown ignited a brutal civil war, drawing in global powers and spawning extremist groups that further fueled the chaos. Over 500,000 people have lost their lives, and more than 13 million have been forced from their homes, making Syria one of the world's largest displacement crises. Families have been torn apart, and generations of children have grown up knowing only conflict. The country is fractured, beyond recognition. Assad's regime controls the west, while rebels and Kurdish forces hold other regions. Foreign armies and militias occupy the rest, turning Syria into a patchwork of warring zones. The economy is in ruins, the currency is nearly worthless, and over 90% of Syrians now live in poverty. Everyday life is a struggle for survival, with basic necessities out of reach for most. Years of sanctions, relentless war, and a devastating earthquake have only deepened the misery, making recovery seem impossible. Today, Syria is a narco-state and a battleground for regional powers like Iran and Russia, with drug smuggling and foreign influence rampant. There's no peace process, no plan for rebuilding, just a frozen conflict and a population left traumatized by years of violence and uncertainty. Syria stands as a tragic symbol of total state collapse, its infrastructure and heritage reduced to rubble, its future uncertain. The world's response remains inadequate, with international efforts falling short and global attention shifting elsewhere. For Syrians, hope is a distant memory, replaced by daily hardship and the longing for peace that never comes. 10 countries, 10 stories of collapse and resilience. These crises aren't just headlines, they're human stories that affect us all in an interconnected world. Awareness is the first step toward change, so let's keep the conversation going in the comments. What surprised you most? Is there a country we missed? Thanks for watching and learning with us today. If you value this kind of analysis, subscribe and stay engaged, stay informed, stay compassionate, and let's make a difference together.